Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we are chatting with Nicolas Fournier from Orion Games, the creator and developer of Megapulse, an adrenaline-fueled, futuristic hovercar racing game that plays 2 to 4 players. It's coming to Kickstarter on November 9th. Nicolas, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
Hey, James. Thanks for having me.
It is awesome having you here. A fellow Canadian.
Yeah. From Montreal.
From Montreal. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So, Nicolas, tell me a little bit about other than the fact that you live in one of the greatest countries on earth, and I'm sure you'd probably argue one of the best provinces in the country. Tell us about your background. What got you kind of into the gaming industry in the first place? Is this something you've been doing your whole life, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I've been playing board games and also making games pretty much my whole life.
Huh.
It's that kind of thing where like it was a passion from when I was a kid, and I just kept doing it. And I had like those very, very bad early prototypes when I was young. So people were not scared to tell me like they were very bad, So I got to learn quickly, and I just kept doing it. And I've been doing it professionally for a few years now. So I'm as well as a board game designer, I'm also a graphic designer.
Yeah.
So that was something I was doing in my career before shifting to board game design.
So are you still doing that, or like are you still on the side like a graphic design, or have you shifted 100% over to games now? Like, is it kind of you're doing both, or?
Yeah, I'm kind of still helping in some project graphic design wise, because
Okay.
I've been hired as a graphic designer in a game studio in Montreal,
Oh, wow.
and I kind of shifted to game designer as I moved along in the company, and now I'm still helping on some of these graphic design projects, but I'm mainly doing game design now. I'm doing board game design as well as video game design because it's a studio that does both.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
we're starting a new video game project in the last few weeks. It's been pretty cool to start a big project and all the brainstorm. It's a fun part.
Now, video game design as well is pretty labor intensive as well, is it not?
Yeah, pretty much. We're in the early steps of that new project, so
Yeah.
it's still pretty calm. We're taking our times to figure out how the game plays, what's the systems, and all that stuff. We're not yet in the last rush before releasing the game. That's always the most intense part, but so far so good.
And are you responsible for like the user experience, or what part of the game do you do? Are you purely the graphics, like creating the actual elements that are going to be on screen animating, or kind of what do you do in that regard?
So I'm not really doing any of graphics right now.
Okay.
We're a small team. We have reduced the team size to have a smaller group to brainstorm the game. So right now I'm just the one guy doing the game design. So I'm
Oh, wow.
doing the system. So it's a survival game. So I'm doing the crafting system, the exploration system, and the combat, all that stuff, how the different systems work together.
Yeah.
So I'm just writing game design documents and writing pages and pages of documentation on how the systems work, and eventually I'll probably help on the graphic design side once the game design is fairly completed.
So with a game like this, does it take a long time? Like, how long does it take to make? Like, is this like an app, or is this actually like a console type game you guys are working on?
So it's a PC game that we're
Okay.
aiming to launch on console as well. So it's a long process.
Like 3 years? How many years does it take to create a game like this?
Yeah. Well, it depends what stage you're looking at, right? Because the complete game maybe 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
But with Steam these days, you can have some early access where you can release the game and say it's a really early access and keep developing the game with the feedback of people. So we're looking for maybe in 1 year being able to give the game out to people and have them try it out and give some feedback, and then maybe in 3 years, 4 years, we'll be completely done with the game.
Do some beta
It's a long
testing and
process.
things like that, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of process, and like in board game design, you're doing a bunch of playtesting as well,
And
then adding stuff. Yeah.
and how have you found the balance between those two things? Like other people I've talked to in the industry that have come from the video game side, and they work on the board game side. Often they see that almost as an escape, quite frankly, from the tediousness sometimes of the video game side, right? And where the last thing they want to do is touch a computer, right? So they would say, "Oh, I want to get more into something tactile." How's that experience been for you? Has it been something similar, or has it just been more kind of from your background and love of board games? That's what's kind of driven this.
Yeah, I've kind of always liked both,
Yeah.
personally, because I was looking at video game design for a while before seriously considering board game design, because there's no really board game related course at university, at least in Montreal. Like you have to go through the video game path
Yeah.
if you want to go into design. So I took that path, and I, I still like video game design, but board game design, I've been playing board games, designing board games all my life. It just fits right. It just feels right for
Yeah.
me, to finally do that, and feels like this is exactly what I've been waiting to do in my career. So it's really really fun to do it. Now for the change of pace, yeah, I mean it's cool, but then in board games you're smaller teams. It's a less big, um, medium.
Yep.
So you're kind of doing the manufacturing side, distribution side as well for these companies when you do board game design. So you're having more fun in the design process, but then you have to struggle with all the stuff
Yeah,
after as
become
well.
more of a
So
business manager, right? Like it's
exactly, yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that often a lot of these indie board game companies are a company of one, right? The bolt on maybe different network of individuals to help kind of bring it forward, but for the most of it is driven by one person, right? So when you were younger, what kind of games were you creating? Like what were you modifying existing board games, or were you creating things completely from scratch, or what were you doing?
So, it all started when, at school I
Mhm.
was kind of bored in class, and I started to design some games that could be played just on paper with some highlighters or the sharpies, and just passing these pages to my friends on next desk, sorry, and then from there I kind of experimented with other types of board games. And I remember my first real board game I was trying to make. I was like, okay, I'm going to do uh, Warcraft 3 as a board game. And it was so ambitious. And I was like 8 years old. And I was like, all right, this is going to be epic. And it took like forever to play. It was very boring. Uh, but then I just played a lot of games with my family, modern board games. So all when I was young, I had all these references of good board games that I was playing, and that kind of built my toolbox to create some better games after that. So really, it's just been doing some, like, having an idea, designing it,
Yeah.
doing something else, like doing like 50 games in a year,
Oh
just
wow.
like trying to do different stuff. I was young, I had time after school, I was doing that stuff. And then when I became older, I kind of missed that. So I entered some game jam contest.
Hmm.
So game jams are usually for video games, but we have
Yeah.
some in for board games here in Montreal, so, which is really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
And so it's 12 hours of competition. You're just trying
Oh,
to create a
jeez.
board game from scratch. And I think I've won them all except one. And it's just so fun, It just test your skills and try to get a new idea. And that's actually how I met my current boss. He was a
Ah.
judge there, and he was like, "Oh, this is potential," and he hired me.
When you were saying that you're creating a lot of games, right? Like tons and
Yeah.
tons of games each year.
Hmm.
It almost reminds me of an interview I was watching with Ed Sheeran, and he was talking about writing music, and his advice was write often, as much as you can. And he said,
Hmm.
when he
Yeah.
first started off, he was writing a song a day, and he goes, when I reflect back on a lot of those songs, a lot of them are crap and garbage. He
Hmm.
goes, but what it does is it starts training you on how to create. And he goes, eventually, through that iterative process, something good is going to come out of it. And I see board game design very similar, where if you're trying to get into this industry, you've got a lot of game ideas, keep creating them. Keep creating games. Eventually, you're going to land on something that is kind of like wow, right? The next kind of big thing.
Hmm.
So it's kind of cool to hear someone like yourself do that. And when you were saying earlier about education, although they don't have that in Montreal, we've had two people now on this podcast that are actual professors of game design, one from
Hmm.
California, one in Toronto. So it is an emerging discipline, I guess I would say, that's starting to come out, which is
Yeah.
really cool and exciting
And
being in the industry
that's
myself.
something as well I want to help with, because I'm currently doing in university my bachelor in video game design,
Cool.
because I can't do the board game design one. But I'm like speaking with the professors and the teachers and all that stuff to help create a board game design program here in Montreal when I'm done with my doctorate and all that stuff. So I
Oh,
want to
awesome.
go like far enough to have the diplomas to actually create a program myself with the help of those already there, because it's there's an interest. There's definitely people who want that analog game design program, but there need to be someone to create it in the first place. So.
So Megapulse, how did this game come about? Where did the idea for Megapulse come from? To me, it is almost like Tron, meets Alita Battle Angel. Kind of those two things merged together is the first thing I thought of when I was looking at kind of this game
Yeah.
and how it's created. I mean, it's just neon and it's just oh man, it sucks you in. It is super cool looking. But where's the genesis of the idea? Where did that begin, and how long ago was that?
Yeah, so at the beginning, it was at a time where I actually stopped school because I was like, I don't want to, going the video game away.
Yeah.
That really becomes video games and university. In college, it was all about programming and websites and all that stuff. That's not really my thing. So I stopped that and I tried to go all in into board game design and try to do something, go on
Yeah.
Kickstarter or something. And I had a friend, Samuel, who helped me do that, and we did a bunch of projects together. And one of them was Megapulse, and we just scrapped it like any other project, and we just kept working on other stuff and scrapped it again and working on other stuff. And at some point, we had a bunch of people saying, "Hey, where's that prototype you made a playtest a few months ago? It was really fun, like the racing game." And I was like, "Oh, it was another game I made, but who cares?" And we're like, "We care. We want to play again." I was like, "Really?" So like it was one that's stuck into people's mind after a few months they played it in a sea of different prototypes.
Yeah.
That was the one so that was the birth of Megapulse. Is we tried to make it something else. So we tried to put some gameplay into that basic idea that it was, because at the beginning there wasn't much to it. It was just the curve mechanic, so
Yeah.
when you move in curves you slide out towards the wall, and if you're already next to the wall you take damage in those curves.
Yeah.
So the premise of it was, do you want to go faster and just take damage in those walls, or do you want to do some sideways movement to keep going? So doing the sideways movement was really fun for us. So it was a question of timing. So the more you go before you move sideways, the more damage you take. But doing the sideways movement inward inside the center of the curve was a safe move, right? So it was just a choice: speed and damage, or safety and being more slow. So that wasn't tied to like racing or futuristic or any theme yet.
Yeah.
It was just that idea. And then we slapped on it a retro futuristic theme, like a Tron, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's why you see on the track, it's like very neon, like a cyan, magentas, all those colors really pop. But then the link to what you said, like it feels like Tron, but for some people it feels like Mario Kart or
Okay.
Wipeout or F-Zero.
I think it's the
Those kind of
generation you
games.
grew up in, right? So I grew up
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
80s, right? So I'm
So
automatically thinking Tron. And the track reminds me of like when I was a kid, when you'd actually have like the electronic race tracks, right? And you would actually
yeah,
construct it and you'd build it, and you can either do an oval or kind of like you have here, you could put a curve in it and like an S shape and so forth, and create cutoffs and stuff like that. So it was very reminiscent of, for lack of a better word, almost taking like toys that we played with the kids,
yeah.
taking video games that we played as kids, taking some futuristic concepts of movies we watched when we were kids, and kind of like crunching it all together. And then you've got Megapulse, right? Which is
That's exactly it. And that's
yeah.
how it was born. Because at the beginning, we didn't have all
cool.
those references. That was playtesters playing the game,
Yeah.
like you, telling us those references, like telling us their childhood memories of them playing with Hot Wheels or playing with toy cars or with these video games.
Yep.
And we said, like, you know what? It does have that vibe. And we made it more and more like those things. And that's one question we asked to our playtesters after they played the game. We were like, okay, we told you it was a Wipeout F-Zero inspired game. Did you feel like it was one? Did you feel like anything was missing from your experience compared to what you expected, right? And any ideas they gave us, we kind of put them into the game as upgrades or as systems. And in the end, we have a board game that we hope will reflect like and emulate all those memories for all those people.
Yeah, it's cool. And I think, and I'm sharing the screen for people who are watching. And if you're listening to the podcast, you should definitely check out our YouTube link and see some of the visuals, because it is an assault on your eyeballs. It is so much color in a good way. Yeah. It's awesome. And so walk me through, how do you play this game? So give me the essence. So you talked about this core mechanic, how when you're racing and if you want to go faster, then you're going to kind of go towards the edge of the track, kind of like you would have in real life if you're driving a car, but you run the risk of damaging your car when you're going around this curve. So start off with these player boards, which are super cool. And you've got these modular kind of like drivers that kind of plug into the player boards. Mm-hmm. Walk us through that. Yeah,
so those are triple layered player boards.
Wow.
And they feel really good because they're not just 3 layers on top of each other. It feels like they have texture to them, because the first layer is not like completely covers the second one. So there's some kind of levels to the player board. It feels really nice in hand.
That's awesome.
And this is your hover car, basically. So you choose a player board that represents which car you're driving. Yeah. And then, as you said, you snap to that pilot tile. So that's the guy who pilots or the girl. It's a pretty unisex characters. You plug them to the board, and that makes your driver and hover car. And on these player boards, you can track your speed. So the more speed you have, the more you'll move each turn. So that's just a base speed. You still have some cards you're going to play to move forward or do some crazy tricks, but you have a base speed that makes you move. And that goes up to 4. But to give you an example, this game is about how to utilize the track and the boost and your nitro and your cards and your power-ups to move more. Mm-hmm. The max speed on that speed gauge you can obtain is 4 movement per turn. But many people kind of move on average 10 spaces per turn. Okay. And on that last round, they can move up to 22 spaces in one round, right?
Wow.
That's just because they made some good decisions on how they're going to maneuver the track and use their abilities. So it really feels like a fast game. And you have that nitro gauge as well on those player boards. Mm-hmm. So you have on the left, you have a nitro gauge that you're going to gain some nitro over time as you pass some boost pads or as you play some cards. And you can spend that nitro, consume it to move a bunch of spaces. So you kind of wait for the right time and then just blast through the finish line, right? Mm-hmm. One cool thing I find about those player boards is also the health. So you have an illustration of the hover car on there, and it's damage. So there's 5 damage spots on that player board. But at the beginning of the game, you're going to put these health tokens on top of the illustration, on top to cover the damage spots, and that replaces with a picture of a perfectly clean car. So as you take damage, you move them down, you remove those tokens, and you reveal the damage underneath. And that feels very thematic. Like we have just, it doesn't matter which ones you take first. It just, you have 5 HP. But some people get crashed on the side, and there's like, okay, I'm going to remove the one from the side because it feels cool. You crash there, like visually it represents the damage. So there you go. And you can insert some cards on the side. That's your upgrades. You have a spot to place your selected cards each turn on the top, and the reference tile snapped at the bottom. So they're very modular. They're made so that everything snaps into the player board game.
That is awesome. It is awesome. And then the what are the bombs? So I saw on the player board there was these kind of bomb sections. So what is that?
Yeah, so those are bombs. They're called super bombs that you can place behind you during the race. They cover 2 spaces wide, so they're very large, and people can try to shoot them to make them detonate in distance, or they can try to avoid them with some sideways movement. But if you do hit the bombs, it explodes. It deals a bunch of damage around. So 2 damage in the whole zone where you're at, and 1 damage adjacent to that. So people are caught in the blast. They're damaged as well. If you place a bomb but can't get away before it explodes, you're kind of caught in your own blast. So these are really fun to place on track.
So you're physically placing them on the track. So you take them off your board and you physically place them on the... Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there are miniatures that can place on the track, and you can block people's path with them. You can just have a bunch of fun. They can trigger chain reactions if they're close to each other. They're fun toy to play around with.
Oh, that's awesome. And then and you're different. So the cars all start off the same, are they? They have the same kind of abilities, the cars, but the players that you choose are like the actual drivers are different, right?
Yeah, there's a symmetry in both. So
Okay.
the pilot you choose has a special ability that's called a catalyst that will help you. For example, the trickster has a grappling hook. You can
Oh,
grapple to
cool.
someone and move with them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Then the expert is very precise. He can move diagonally when he activates his ability. So they each have a very strongly different ability, and that ability gets stronger as they get behind in the race. So that's a catch-up mechanic. So if you're too far behind, your ability gets stronger. So that's very asymmetric. Now the vehicle have some asymmetry, but it's not that strong because this game plays with cards.
Yeah.
So you have 7 cards in hand. These cards will allow you to change your turn order, move sideways, drift through curves, all that stuff. And basically, you play 2 of these cards each turn. Then you reveal. There's some simultaneous action selection, but you can change these cards. So there's upgrades that you're going to gain as you pass the checkpoints on the map, and these upgrades will go into your hand. They will do some hand building, we call it.
It's like a deck builder.
So, yeah, but you never lose your cards. After you play them, you take them right back into your hand.
Okay.
So that means you kind of build your deck, but it's in fact your hand. So you build your options of what you can do on your turn.
Okay. How does that reset though? So once you play that card, then how does that card get reset to your hand? Is it just on the next turn?
At the end of the round.
Okay,
yeah.
the end of the round.
As soon as the round is over, we take them back. Yeah.
Got it.
So because of that, the asymmetry of the hover card is just one special card in your hand, because we don't need much difference in the different hands. Because as soon as we start racing, we gain upgrades, and it starts being different right away.
Yeah. How many racers can you choose from? Is it like, so I know there's 2 to 4 players, but how many actual characters can you?
So there are 4 hover cars and 4 racers, so
Okay.
you can mix and match them as you like. We do have expansions planned, so there's going to be one available at the start of the campaign and more unlocked if we raise enough. And those will add more characters and more hover cars and more mechanics, all that
Oh,
stuff.
that's cool. So over time, if you want to kind of get more combinations and permutations, you have the ability to do that with expansions and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. Like, for example, on the launch, we have the Soul Flux expansion,
Yeah.
which has the Mystic and the Colossus and as the pilots. And the Mystic can spawn ghost copies of himself.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
there's going to be these ghost copies, and you try to gain the boost pads with the ghost to gain benefits from that. So they're very varied, very cool to experiment with. Yeah.
And how many
Since you can mix
laps?
and match.
How many laps
Yeah.
are in this game?
Oh, you can choose. So we have a track booklet with around 30 different suggested track, and we say how long it takes to do 1 lap on each of those tracks. So you can do 1, 2, or 3 laps depending on how much time you want to invest in the game. So, at Gen Con in Essen, we were doing 20-minute games. So 20-25 minutes, very quick. But then again,
So how many laps is that? Like a 20-minute game, how many laps would that be?
We're doing 1 lap,
Okay.
of a small track. You can. We usually recommend like a 2 laps on the medium track, and that's about 60 to 90 minutes. Yeah, because it's just go for it.
I was going to say your mod. Yeah, no, it's cool. The modular track, which I'm showing on screen here for people to see, so you can see these tiles. How does it? Do you just lay it down, or does it click into itself somehow, or how do you lay out that track?
Yeah, for the physical prototypes right now, we have you just lay them down next to each other, but we will have a small indent, so that they can click with each other.
Got it. That's cool.
To make it easier.
And then you can create literally any combination you want, right? Like you're building this track as it's showing the images on screen there, where if you want to put a curve, and you put a curve, and then you're saying, or I thought I read somewhere that you can do shortcuts. And how does that work?
Yeah, so there are some weird ones in there.
Yeah.
So the track can, if you use them correctly, you can split the track in 2. Maybe you can have 2 different paths with different options there. Maybe you can do a shortcut where maybe the shortcut is very hard to take, but if you don't take the shortcut, you have an extra upgrade to try to catch to people who got the shortcut. There are some weird ones that will do harder curves, some ones that will make the track more narrow and then wider again.
Yeah.
So yeah, with these different special track tiles, we call them, there's a bunch of fun you can have building those tracks.
So I want to dig into your catch-up mechanic that you were talking about earlier on. What was the idea behind that? Why was that important to you to put that into the game?
Yeah, so the game is a game about crashing into each other, shooting each other, placing bombs. It's a game designed to be strategic, but at the same time, the strategy is mainly around trying to outsmart people, and it's not fun if there's no one to outsmart. So we have a very subtly implemented catch-up naturally into the game. So it's, for example, you have a shooting action to shoot people in front of you, and that instantly hits them, right? It's a
Yeah.
missile that hits them, and you can shoot people. But if you want to attack people behind you as the first player, you have to drop bombs, and you're hoping that these bombs will blow up, but maybe they won't. So there's every single bit of the game is designed so that it's slightly easier to catch up to people than it is to run away. So that makes the game very tight. But if all of that fails, we have the catch up. So if you're too far behind, for example, if you have made some bad decisions because it's your first game, or if you had some people gang up on you and shooting you, and now you're destroyed and you have to repair and keep going, this catch up mechanic will help you go back into the race. But the way it's designed is it won't allow you to catch up to the leader, only catch up the distance of which you're too far behind, right? So we have 5 spaces between each other, which is the perfect distance between each player. So this will help you catch up a bit, and then from there you're back in the race. You still have a chance to win. It's up to you to try to make some good decisions to actually pass the leader.
That's cool.
So that was very important to us, because if there's a runaway leader, that's
it sucks, right? It's like, all right, well, why keep playing, because that guy's already too far ahead to catch, right? So
there's no point anymore.
and then your the bombs. How do you recover your bombs? I was thinking about this. When you put the bombs down, how do you get them back? Is it just when you complete the lap, then you get your bombs back, or how does that work?
Well, so the bomb stays there until the end of the game, or until they explode. So that means you can place a bomb as the last player, just because you want to screw up the first player when you finish the lap, right? But as soon as the bomb explodes, it goes back into your inventory. So you have 3 of these bombs. I never saw someone not having enough bombs, right? Because you have up to 3 bombs, but usually you place them smartly enough that they explode at some point. So you can place as many bombs as you want to. They're balanced. They're not overpowered, so you can have fun with them and don't feel bad.
And then and I think it was Alex Radcliffe. I was watching an interview with him when he was talking about the game, where he's doing an overview. And so the cars can actually get damaged to the point where they stop driving. Is that correct? And you have to repair them, or how does that work?
Kind of. That felt bad. That was in the very early versions of the game. We had, if you're broken, you lose a turn, basically. And then you repair and keep going. So now you don't lose a turn. You only have to give up your speed to repair. But on that same turn, you can still play your cards, and these cards will help you move. And on that next turn, you have some speed, and you can.
So it's a speed penalty basically to repair. So you're going speed versus repairing your car, kind of a thing. So it's kind of trade-offs, right?
Yeah, and it's not that bad. On the other hand, what we give is if I damage you, these health tokens I talked to you about. You're gonna remove them from your illustration. Cool, some damage underneath. All right, but that token, you place it next to my color on your player board, so you keep track that I dealt that damage to you.
Oh, okay.
So at the end, if you're destroyed, then because, for example, I dealt 3 damage to you, I have 3 frenzy tokens, and I can spend them to move forward more. So it's not the killer that gets the reward; it's everyone who participated in destroying the
in the frenzy.
Right? Yeah, so they get rewarded for damaging other players. That means that we create the same distance between the destroyed and the others, without making the destroyed feeling bad, because you can just keep playing, but the other ones have a reward to keep going faster.
Oh, that's awesome. So what's the next steps? So you're going to launch on November 9th, right? Is when this hits Kickstarter?
Yeah, that's correct.
I have put a link in the show notes. So if anybody wants to check out the show notes, if they want to check out this campaign, they should, because it at the very least, just visually, this is something to behold. It just looks awesome. I mean, it's a showpiece, right? When people walk by, they're like, oh, what's that? It pulls you in. And then kind of what are the steps after? So after you finish your campaign, and my hope for you is that you fund, because I want to see this game out there. I think it's going to be awesome. What comes next after that? Is it more expansions, or do you have other games in your repertoire that you're working on, or kind of what's kind of in the future for Orion Games?
So we'll be focusing on fulfilling Mega Balls. But then after that, we have with Devin. Devin has been helping me immensely, doing the marketing and all that stuff. He's been with me at Gen Con. He's been just awesome. And basically, he has a game called Punch Cake Block, which is also awesome. So we talk about trying to get Punch Cake Block on Kickstarter after Mega Pulse, and maybe doing some partnership after that in the long run. We really like doing some designs and working together. So we
That's awesome.
Try to join forces.
It's cool seeing that in the industry, seeing various developers, designers working together, right? And we're all kind of trying the same goal, which is how do we get more people playing more games? How do we get more games onto the market? Let's keep the industry growing. So I think that's awesome. If somebody wants to follow along, how best do they follow you for this campaign?
So to follow me, you can follow us on Facebook. We're very active there. Just search Megapulse. We post all kind of updates there.
Yeah.
You can also go to our landing page if you want to subscribe to the mailing list. It's Orion.com. It's a French name, so we'll have it linked in the description, I'm sure.
Yeah. But I think actually, even if you type in OrionGames.com, I think it takes you to that same spot.
Sure.
Yeah, RyanGames.com. It does. It takes you there. I tried it today. So,
and also, one last thing is if you subscribe to the mailing list before the Kickstarter, so you have 8 days for that, we give you a free small expansion with your pledge. So,
that's awesome. Membership has benefits. Well, I just want to thank you again, Nicolas, for your time. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I want to wish you all the best with this campaign. I can't wait to see where you guys land. Take care.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Cheers.
It's been a pleasure.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply join the Facebook group Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.